Please, just shoot us. The desert sun was setting, painting the sky blood orange as Captain and his crew rolled their bikes down the old dirt trail near the Mexican border. The air was thick with heat, and the only sound was the rumble of engines and the crunch of gravel beneath their tires. They weren't looking for trouble. They were just doing what they did every month, leaving bottles of water along the migrant routes, a simple act of mercy in a merciless land. But that day, mercy would demand much more. The desert riders had been doing this run for 7 years. All of them were veterans: Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam. They'd seen war, lost brothers, and come home to a country that didn't know what to do with them. So they found purpose on the road, riding together, helping those who couldn't help themselves. Their patches read, "Leave no one behind." And they meant it. Captain, the club president, was riding point when he saw it, tire tracks leading off the main trail, deep and fresh. Then he saw the blood. Dark stains in the sand, leading toward a cluster of rocks and a rusted shipping container half buried in the dirt. He raised his fist. The convoy stopped. "Doc, wrench, with me," Captain said, his voice low and steady. The others fanned out, engines idling, eyes scanning the horizon. If you believe in standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves, in courage over comfort, and in the power of brotherhood, then before we go any further, please hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, because what happened next will remind you that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to look away. Captain approached the container slowly. The door was cracked open, just slightly, and inside he could hear breathing, shallow, panicked. He pulled the door wider, and the sunlight spilled in. 5 women stared back at him. Their wrists were zip-tied. Their eyes were hollow, filled with terror so deep it didn't even register hope when they saw him. One of them, the oldest, maybe 30, whispered in broken English, "Don't. They're coming back. In 1 hour. Please, just shoot us. It's better than going back." Captain's jaw tightened. He'd seen a lot of bad things in his life, but this was something else. "Wrench, cut them loose," he said quietly. Wrench pulled out his knife and started sawing through the zip ties. The women didn't move, didn't speak. They just watched, like they'd forgotten what freedom looked like. Doc knelt beside the oldest woman. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Maria," she whispered. "They took us 3 days ago. Told us we'd have jobs. Instead." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Captain looked at his watch. If the traffickers were coming back in an hour, that didn't leave much time. He keyed his radio. "All units, we've got 5 souls here. Cartel transport. They're coming back armed. We need to move. Now." The response was immediate. "Copy that, Captain. Rolling." But Maria grabbed his arm. "No. You don't understand. These men, they don't stop. They own the police here. They own the roads. If you take us, they'll hunt you. They'll kill you." Captain looked her in the eye, his voice steady as stone. "Ma'am, we didn't leave men behind in Fallujah. We sure as hell aren't leaving you here." He turned to his crew. 1 woman per bike. We ride hard for the border. No stops." The women climbed onto the bikes, shaking, clutching the riders in front of them like lifelines. Maria rode behind Captain. As the engines roared to life, she whispered, "Why are you doing this?" Captain didn't look back. "Because it's the right thing to do." They tore through the desert, dust clouds billowing behind them. The border was 30 miles north. If they could just make it across the line, the women would be safe. But 5 miles in, Captain saw it in his mirror, 3 black SUVs, closing fast. "Contact rear." Wrench shouted over the radio. "They're on us." Captain's mind raced. They couldn't outrun them, not with passengers. The SUVs had horsepower and numbers. But then he remembered something. He keyed the radio again, this one on a different channel. All clubs, all chapters. This is Captain, Desert Riders. I'm calling in a favor. We've got innocence in play. Coordinates follow. If you ever believed in the code, now's the time. For a moment, there was only static. Then, one by one, the responses came in. Iron Saints, inbound. Steel Legion, rolling. War Dogs, 10 minutes out. Grease Monkeys, we're close. Hold tight. Even clubs that had beef with each other, clubs that wouldn't normally ride together, were answering the call. Because this wasn't about territory or pride. This was about something bigger. The SUVs were gaining. Captain could hear the engines screaming behind them. Then he heard something else, gunfire. A bullet pinged off Wrench's fender. Maria gasped, her grip tightening. Stay low. Captain shouted. They crested a ridge, and there it was, the border fence, half a mile away. But between them and safety stood the SUVs, cutting them off, skidding to a stop in a cloud of dust. Doors flew open. Men with rifles stepped out. Captain and his crew stopped, engines rumbling. The women were silent, frozen in fear. It looked like the end. But then, from the west, came a sound like thunder. Over the hills, cutting through the fading light, came the cavalry. Dozens of motorcycles, then hundreds, pouring over the ridge like a metal river. The Iron Saints. The Steel Legion. The War Dogs. The Grease Monkeys. Clubs from 3 states, converging on one spot. They formed a line between the Desert Riders and the Cartel. 200 bikes, 200 riders, standing shoulder to shoulder. No one spoke. No one needed to. The Cartel men looked at each other. One of them raised his rifle, but his partner pushed it down, shaking his head. They weren't stupid. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and out of time. Slowly, they got back in their SUVs. Engines started. And they turned around. Captain let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Maria was crying now, her tears falling onto his jacket. You're safe, he said quietly. You're safe now. The convoy rolled to the border crossing together, 200 strong. The women were handed over to immigration officials, who'd been alerted by one of the clubs. Maria looked back at Captain one last time before she walked through the gate. She didn't say anything. But the look in her eyes said everything. The clubs didn't celebrate. They just nodded to each other, started their engines, and rode home. No speeches. No glory. Just the quiet knowledge that they'd done what needed to be done. A year later, Maria stood at a podium in a small community center, speaking to a room full of people. She was a U.S. citizen now, working as an advocate for trafficking survivors. Behind her on the wall was a photo, 200 motorcycles, lined up in the desert at sunset. I once thought the world was full of monsters, she said, her voice steady. But that day, I learned that sometimes the people you fear most are the ones who show you what courage really looks like. In the back of the room, Captain stood with his arms crossed, a faint smile beneath his beard. He didn't need thanks. Watching her stand strong was enough. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Let the world know that heroes don't always wear capes, sometimes they wear leather and ride steel. And if you believe that we're all responsible for protecting those who can't protect themselves, drop a comment below. Because sometimes, it takes a desert, 100 engines, and one impossible choice to reveal what humanity really means. Some roads lead to freedom. And some riders refuse to let anyone walk them alone.